Hello, 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 hello. It's good to see you. Say hello.
Welcome to the Huskies Hockey Podcast. We have sweeps to talk about, one good and one bad. So let's, I kind of just want to get into it. But then I say that, and then I just had a quick question for you beforehand. What's your favorite Tom Petty song?
Put me on the spot. I can't say that I know a ton of deep cuts of his. Like I'm basically just the the half dozen that are standard issue classic rock fodder at this point. All American Girl, Don't Come Around Here No More, a good one. Mm-hmm. But again, I can't really go. I'm only skin deep with Petty. Give me a deep cut, or where are you wanting?
I mean, I'm not. I'm not saying that you have to go deep with it. You know, the classics are hits; they're big for a reason. So, the reason why I say is because obviously one comes into my head, and that's Free Fallin'.
That's where you're going.
That's where I was going.
Just a little slow on the uptake.
So,
I just I heard that song yesterday too.
It's one of those songs that for some reason you've always just heard it within the last week or two. Yeah. It's always around. So that's kind of what I'm getting at for the men's team. They get nothing this weekend. They get no points on the board, no points to show for it. Andrew, we'll go to you for the recap quick.
The Huskies meet Arizona State for the first time since December of 2016, and for the first time as conference foes. Friday's action sees radical line shuffling from a Huskies team desperate to break an offensive drought. However, it's the Sun Devils who score first, as Cullen Potter rips one by Gavin Enright at the 12:28 mark of the first period. Huskies answer right back on the power play when Adam Ingram goes top shelf on a rebound chance, and it's 1-1 after one. The Huskies appear to take the game over early in the second period, as Gavin Thorson breaks a long pointless streak by sniping a shot past Gibson Homer off the faceoff at 1:30 of the second, and then Mason Salquist bangs home his third goal of the season with a greasy goal that's upheld after a video review. But the Devils fight back and find their footing in the second half of the game. In a 3-minute 36-second span, Arizona State gets goals from Ryan Kerwin, Lucas Sillinger, and Benji Eckerly to turn a 3-1 deficit into a 4-3 advantage going into the third period. The Devils make it a 2-goal cushion just 5 minutes into the third period, cashing in on their only power play opportunity of the game on Kyle Smolin's 6th goal of the season. Kerwin gets his 2nd goal of the game with St. Cloud's net empty, and Arizona State picks up the big comeback win, 6-3. Would St. Cloud stop the bleeding on Saturday night? Lucas Sillinger silences the Husky faithful at 7:38 of the first period to give Arizona State the 1-0 lead going into the first intermission. Tyson Gross gets the equalizer 8 minutes into the second period, with new line mates Austin Bernovic and Grant Deshawn picking up assists, and it's a brand new ball game at 1-1. The Huskies outshoot the Sun Devils 25-13 through the first 2 periods of the game, but Gross takes an ill-advised checking from behind major penalty just under 2 minutes into the third period, and Arizona State takes full advantage. First, it's point man Noah Beck at 2:33, making it 2-1. Ty Jackson makes it 3-1 just 48 seconds later, and Ryan Kerwin adds his 3rd goal of the weekend at 5:35, turning a 1-1 deadlock into a comfortable 4-1 lead for the road squad. The Huskies show some fight as Gavin Thorson picks up his 2nd goal in as many games at 11:59 of the third. Damon Gardner makes it interesting at 16:57, scoring the Huskies' 1st goal this year with the extra attacker. With about 90 seconds to go, Gavin Thorson has a golden opportunity to tie it up, can't lift it above the sprawling Gibson Homer's blocker, and Artem Schlane puts any St. Cloud comeback attempt to bed with an empty netter at 19:14, and the Sun Devils pick up a key road sweep with a 5-3 victory.
Alrighty. I've got a lot of thoughts about this weekend. and obviously we got the swoon that has continued to go on. We're in the middle of an absolute frigid spell here. I think right now it's about -10 as I'm recording this, and I don't think it's going to get below 0 for the next couple of days. How's everything in Arizona? How's the temperature there from where you're watching the games?
I mean, it's nice. I don't want to rub it in. I mean, it was like 60 some degrees today, but I mean, which it's like sweater weather. I mean, it's we did have somewhat of a warm spell in late December, early January. So when people were upset about it here, which I found to be somewhat precious. I don't think you can ever, I don't care what the scenario, 72 degrees, you can't complain about that. That's not too warm. That's not too hot. That's not anything to complain about. But yet people here we're missing some colder temperatures.
That's Goldilocks right there for you, 72.
Right. So a bit warmer, and maybe part of that warmness in Arizona, some of that was from the Arizona State hockey team, who's been hot themselves and carried it through this weekend, unfortunately, at the expense of our favorite team.
And I think maybe some of the warmth from the blades melted the ice to knock off the net a couple of times, because I think this was our loosest net series so far of the season. I think there were about 4 or 5 times there that the pegs were popped off.
Yes, listening, or I did the Fox 9 broadcast. Listened to the announcers on Saturday, and they did the thing where they popped off on both sides of the rink within 30 seconds or so. When it went off on the side where Enright was playing goal, not a peep, no commentary. When it came down the other side, it's JFK was killed by the CIA, and Gibson Homer did this on purpose. And it's a talking point that I'm getting really tired of. Yes, he put his shoulder there and shrugged it. I honestly think goalies kicking the nets off is like exceedingly, astonishingly rare. And it's the main culprit is the crappy ice and the refrigeration system. We don't need to think about it any deeper than that. But again, if that's what gets you through the day, by thinking that all the opponents cheat or just angels, that's fine. I understand that, at least.
If that's if that's what your main angst is about the Husky squad as of late, there's you got a little bit of a screw loose there. So, I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on the weekend. So I want you to start it off, and then I'm going to kind of give you my thoughts.
You wish for.
So, all right, let's get into it.
No, I mean, my fire, my vitriol, it was out of the system last weekend. Like I said on the last week's show, I thought, hey, hockey's weird. You can have a 4-1 Husky win on Friday, and it was looking that it could turn out that way. I was pleasantly surprised to see the radical line shuffling that was implemented for this weekend. It was correct reportage from Alex Fern that Rosborough was injured 4 to 6 weeks, is what the official word is, which did force the hand of the coaching staff, and not only just kind of plugging Ryman into that fourth line center role, but blowing pretty much everything up. I mean, Hall and Brnovic, even some pairings that I thought would be preserved, pretty much they drew these lines up from scratch.
Do you think that was due to Rosborough's? Do you think Larson would have done it anyway?
You'd really hope. It's hypothetical, I guess. It's academic to discuss it. You would have hoped that some line shuffling would have occurred like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Like it wouldn't have come to this point in the season to get some tinkering. again, speculation of how much that cost you. You're in your annual, to this point, 4th straight year that you've had a 6-game winless streak in conference. It's a little screwed up this year because the St. Thomas non-conference game fell in the middle of this. But still, that's been the case the last 4 years. And the streak is still active, so we can add on to that streak. We're hoping not, but it certainly doesn't look great. I mean, but the offense did look energized to an extent that we hadn't seen it in a while. 3 goals in each night. Even especially good to see guys like Ingram and particularly Thorson. 3 goals combined between those two players this weekend, especially with Thorson. It was great to see because that's something that you feel like that's a player we mentioned last week, someone that we can build on. And for his season to be as disappointing as it has been up to this point, for him to have a goal in each game and very close to getting a second goal there on Saturday, it was really nice to see his performance this weekend. We might get to that in our Powell segment, hint. But so there were some positives, definitely from the offensive standpoint. And again, you'd like to have, you wish you could have gone back and have done changes like this last weekend against Duluth. You feel like that would have led to more than 2 goals combined when you're playing up in Amsoil. You can't play the coulda, shoulda, woulda at this point. You'll drive yourself nuts if you do that. But 6 goals on the weekend, that's not stellar offense. That's not going to lead the country to have the 3-goal a game average, but that puts you into the kind of offensive production that we're more used to here at being St. Cloud fans, and it's kind of offensive output that you need to have if you're going to be a serious team with NCAA aspirations. I don't want them to have this weekend say, okay, well, now we've got to preserve these lines in amber for the next month. I want to see more consistent. I don't need to see the blendered lines every game, but don't wait for 7 games of no offensive production from the Saltquist line for you to make another round of tinkering.
Sure.
Hopefully this can show that moving guys around can generate just a spark in and of itself. Obviously, that's not the be-all, end-all formula for wins. We didn't get one this weekend. But at least that aspect of the game was better than we've seen it in a while. But then you have the other shoe drop, whereas the defense I thought was bad this week. And goaltending, again, I hate putting it on Enright. I really don't feel like it's his fault here. But you were bound to regress in goaltending, especially relying on Gavin Enright to the extent that we have. Giving up 5 goals last Saturday against Duluth, and then 5 and 4 when he was in the net these 2 games against the Sun Devils. I mean, it's perhaps one of those things that Apache in the first half could have stolen 1 or more of these games just the last 2 weekends. But it's more that the defense, I think, underperforming, and the Wiley injury is probably a factor in that. But I don't know. That sequence on the Friday game where they scored the 3 quick goals to take it from a 3-1 deficit to a 4-3 lead for Arizona State. I mean, it was a complete collapse of that system. Just guys left wide open, and once the floodgates opened, we saw that on Saturday too on the power play, the deciding 5-minute major. Once the worm turned, so to speak, it was hard for the Huskies to stop the bleeding until it was too late. So that was definitely frustrating. So it's like this frustration now where we can't sync up good performances from our units. We have decent offense this week, but we kind of have shoddy defense. The Friday game in Duluth, it was basically a 1-0 game. You feel like if your offense would have shown up there, your defense was played well enough to win. We're not able to match up these performances from the offense and the defense. It's, again, adding to the frustrations here. But 0 for 2025 so far. It's a trend that needs to stop and soon.
Yeah, we're to coin Duluth slogan from last year where they said winless in February. I believe it was. We're going for winless in January. Here's what we have coming up. I think
that was no win November.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. No win November. So we got to come up with a punny cliche for January.
I was actually thinking about that because we've come to dub it the February funk because we like the alliteration. But looking at the last couple of years, as I mentioned, this is the 4th year in a row we've had this long losing streak in conference games. Last year, it was another January. The swoon came in January last year. They were actually 4-2 last February. Now, much of that is attributed to a 2-game sweep at Miami.
Right?
So, but the January of last year, 0-3-3. You had 3 ties sprinkled in there, but that was also in January of last year. So you've gone, if you want to go
January.
back,
Junky January.
That's good. Yeah, you want to go back January, that Denver series. Remember when Anhorn got hurt and you swept Denver at home?
Yeah,
that weekend. That's the last time St. Cloud has won a game in January. A game in January, because it's been 0-4 this January. You had the winless January last year, and you got swept in Duluth in the last 2 games of that January of 2023. So it's been a while, and it's done a lot to harm your chances here, not only of the NCAAs, which at this point seem a distant attainable goal, but you're in 8th place in the conference.
8th place. So
yeah. Miami, that Miami team is the only thing that's keeping you out of dead last.
Thankfully, they look solely in 9th. So I guess we got that going for us. I actually was pretty pleased with how the Huskies played overall. And I know that kind of sounds maybe a little bit ridiculous, and a little bit of, other than that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play? Like, you had a couple of minutes where you had everything collapse on Friday, and then you had Tyson Gross's 5-minute major. I mean, you take off those 2 things, and we're looking at a split plus weekend. And like you said, yeah, the defense. I don't think the defense was terrible. It was those stretches that they were bad. Anytime that you give up a goal early on a 5-minute major, it just feels like that there's going to be at least one more coming. And that's kind of how it felt when I was in the building there on Saturday. It was like you see the gross hit, and then you're like, I mean, yeah, that's a 5-minute major. But then again, I was like, the hit on Byfuglien wasn't called 5 minutes after review. And to me, they looked like the same hit. Byfuglien's back was always to, I can't remember who delivered the hit now off the top of my head. And the fact that he hit him from behind like that when there wasn't any motion of a turn or anything like that. So I was like, maybe we'll get out of this with just the 2 upon review, even though I think both of them should have been 5. So the consistency there, I was like, come on. I didn't care for that, but I was like, it was one of those things that I thought even for the first 2 periods there against Arizona State, I thought on Saturday we were looking really good. We were having a lot of chances, second and third chances. We just weren't able to connect on and get in, and it just was one of those things that you felt the momentum shift after they called it that 5-minute major, and you're like, God, if we get out of that, I think if we get out of that, we win. I think we're able to get the momentum and come back, but sure enough, 20 seconds into that major, we had a breakdown and we were letting some juicy passes go through on that penalty kill. You can tell how much we missed Wiley here over the weekend. And that cost us. Now, kudos that we were able to fight back. Sure, we got some lucky bounces, but, throwing it on net. And that's the biggest thing that I have against this team is that I think either we think we're better than we are, that we can make that sexy extra pass, or we're still stuck in these passes worked in juniors. And we're just not getting it through our head that they're not working. They don't work at the collegiate level. So, finally, after, we're in desperation mode, being down 4-1, we were able to just kind of throw some stuff out there and was able to get it. And like I said, like you said, Thorson was, just a little bit off from tying that game. So I'm happy with the pushback there. Other than those couple of minutes, or after that penalty kill, the 4 goals with the goalie in net, and they were all on the power play for Arizona State. So that is obviously going to need some work depending on how long Wiley's going to be out. But even on Saturday or on Friday as well, I thought we looked good. I was happy with the line. I thought they bounced back from the line shuffling really well. But it was just uncharacteristic to see those type of defensive breakdowns in that Friday game where everyone was just alone. Like it was a sea of emptiness between the Arizona players and Wright. And it was just those types of breakdowns you can't have. And Arizona's going to be a team to put that away. So I'm actually, fairly happy. I thought this was the best that they played in a while. And I really liked how the weekend went other than the scoreboard. Now, obviously the scoreboard's all that matters. And we're going to Omaha here this next weekend. And, they've been playing some pretty solid hockey as of late. So we got to turn this around. But, I like the line shuffling, and I thought they responded what they need to. Still got to capitalize on some of those chances, and you got to just keep it maybe a little bit more simple when it comes to it, because I think that's the recipe for this team. And hopefully if we can turn some of these positives and keep focusing on it, clean up some of those mistakes, we're going to have a solid stretch run here towards the end.
Yeah, what's your read on that? You're still holding out hope for a turnaround at the end of this year.
Yeah, I'm holding out hope for it. I think it's a little JoJo. I think it's a little too little too late, as the song from the 90s goes. I'm sorry, I should go back. JoJo was a singer who had 2 big hits. One was called Leave, parentheses, Get Out, end parentheses. And then their other big hit was Too Little Too Late. It was just too little too late. So when I say things are JoJo, I think they're maybe a little bit too little too late. Like you said about the line switching and like trying something different. I think Larson, he wasn't quick enough on the trigger to make some kind of changes. But I'm holding out a hope that, yeah, we're going to have a strong stretch run and maybe be a thorn in the side of some that we're able to get to St. Paul, especially if it's my last year. Especially if it's the last year. I want St. Cloud to be there, if even for one game. A final send-off would be nice, but I think they're able to. And I think they've got, I think they've got the ability, they've got the talent. I think they just need to put it all together, and they just haven't yet. Even in the games that they've won, it feels like, we've kind of eked it out within, some exceptions, obviously, like the second Michigan game and whatnot. But, I think they have the ability to. I'm excited to see what they're going to do for the rest of the season, judging from what I've seen this last weekend. And I know that's an unpopular take. And I know a lot of people are going to say that this was a terrible weekend because we didn't get the results we wanted. And, to a certain extent, I agree. But judging by how the game was, you take away 9 minutes out of 120, and like I said, it's a sweet plus easy a split plus weekend. So it's I'm holding out hope. I think it's a little bit too little too late that we're going to need to win the Frozen Face-Off to get to the NCAAs. I think there's just a little bit too much ground to make up from what we've lost over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, that's. I still think you have I'm not saying that this is likely, but I've seen that opinion out there as, well, I got to win the tournament. It probably still is more likely that they could get in as an at-large. I mean, I don't see them winning 4 straight games in the playoffs. And you're still at 22 in pairwise. I feel it's easier to move up 12 spots in pairwise by playing teams like Western Michigan and Denver. Mostly those 2 teams that are above you in the pairwise at this point. North Dakota to another extent. And they're not as high as those teams in the pairwise. But the possibility of jumping up by winning games against those kind of teams seems more likely than winning the NCHC tournament. But I don't think either scenario is very likely at this point. But I'm glad that you were more impressed with them this weekend than I was. And I mean, I don't disagree with what you're saying, but on a whole, it didn't. Something about this team is just missing something. And once like the Arizona State gets it back to 3-2 on Friday, it just sensed that, here it is, and something is coming. I just have a spidey sense when it comes to when bad things are going to happen to this team, and there doesn't seem to be a way that they can turn things around when the snowball is rolling down the hill. It doesn't seem like there's a good way for them to stop it at this point, but.
So, yeah, I mean, we got Omaha, North Dakota, Western Michigan. I mean, Colorado College has been on its own free fall. Denver, Minnesota, Duluth, that's the remaining schedule. So, as far as like ahead of the pairwise or ahead of you in the pairwise, Arizona State, you're done with. You only play them 1 series. Omaha, even though, like I'm telling, how I said earlier, they've, as kind of rocketed up the standings. I mean, they're sitting in 3rd right now in the NCHC. They're still sitting at 38th in the pairwise. So like this coming up, this is a weekend here that you feel like you got to win if you're going to start to turn anything around. Because I think some losses here is kind of really going to end up stubbing you. And it's at a place where maybe a little bit sketchy that we haven't played the best at. The Zoo, I think, has been keeping us late at night. The Gorillas, they're having us in the hotel room next to the chimpanzees that keeping us up at night. So before we talk to Omaha and about Omaha, I just want to know, you got a pal for the weekend?
Yeah, like I said, I'll go with Thorson. I like how he played this weekend, and just important to get him off the mat to see if if you can salvage the season here from his perspective. get him off, get him finished here on the right foot, and ending on a high note, so to speak. So it was good to see him perform maybe his best weekend so far this year.
Yeah, I think it was Thorson's best weekend. I was really happy overall with his game. And I would say, he is my POW as well. I'm happy that you got him, in a line of a good playmaking center. And I thought even though that, his first goal was just kind of right off the face-off and rifled in, but just overall, I thought he had really good chances, and I think eventually the goals are going to come much more. Happy to see Ingram, like you said, also him get on the board. So I think once those guys kind of start rolling, Thorson though is kind of the guy that I'm really excited about coming up here for the second half of the season. So. Go Huskies woo. Actually said Enright, which a little bit of a surprise, but yeah, I can't really fault him on many of the goals. Yeah, maybe the first goal on I think it was Saturday's game. One of Arizona State's first goals, where they kind of came down. I think maybe that was Friday game where Zinger got caught and came back. That one probably should have been saved, but the 3 goals in, a 4-minute span, I think all of those were just him literally being hung out to dry. And then a lot of the power play were just beautiful passes. So I can see Enright as well. Go Huskies woo also added. It sucks that he came out of retirement for this to see defense crumbling in front of him. Saratori, I don't think would ever let that happen. He liked to camp out too many people probably in front of the net to help out at Enright. So, but yeah, switching gears to your favorite team in Omaha. So what are you kind of looking forward out of the Huskies against the Red Mavericks?
Yeah, it's been a difficult road trip. Not the most success there the last few years. And as you say, it's you can't take any opponent for granted at this point. Every team that you're going to be facing, well, I mean, just at this point of the year, the only team that you're ahead of in the standings is Miami in conference standings. So you're going to be looking up to everybody else the rest of the way here. Obviously, we want to see some forward action moving up the standings. Hopefully, when maybe you face Duluth or CC, that those teams can be beneath you at that point. But as of now, Omaha's in a pretty decent position, and I don't see them getting more than a split, and even that I feel is maybe pushing it. It's just this team doesn't really inspire me at this point. And Omaha, coming off a sweep against Miami, and then this past weekend, and then CC the week before. It's not like they've been playing the best competition, but a team that's got some positive momentum here going forward. So it's their second half of the season, they've just lost one game, and that was to UMass Lowell in one of their 2 neutral site tournaments they were playing this year. That one was in Southern California. So playing well. They've already beaten St. Cloud once this year. That was in overtime, but just a month and change ago. Been playing fairly well, actually, since they get swept in the first series of conference play at home against Western Michigan. But since then, they've gotten 3 sweeps, 2 of which to Miami. So there is that caveat, but no, and then splits. So they haven't been. They've been saving their best play for conference play so far this year, and the non-conference performance is really what sunk them in the pairwise. But
I like how we always have to say to Miami. Like everything has to be like, oh yeah, but it's Miami. We have to remember that. Poor
yes, yeah. A team that I don't know if I would be confident playing if I was the Huskies at this point. That the Huskies the only team to drop a point against Miami this year in conference play. So yeah, they had to go on the road, and it's not like they were dominant over the Red Hawks, but got the job done, and now returning home. And so yeah, it's I just want to see some positive play here from the Huskies. Any sort of expectations, or you got to do this, you got to do that, that's sort of out the window for me at this point. Just give me, like, from what I can say, though, well, I'll agree this last weekend, the games were entertaining. They were more entertaining than the Duluth games.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
Yeah, let's give me something, give me some goals to watch. If it's for, if it's against, at least it's something. So, in that regard, it's just give me a performance like that where I can, if it's just something like looking at guys like Thorsten, or some of these other players that we're kind of looking at in terms of key players for the future, just see some upward momentum there. I mean, I'm curious to know if Wiley is going to be returning soon. I don't believe that the injury was as serious as the Rosborough one, where he's going to be out for an extended stretch. It was maybe a couple of weeks. So that would obviously be a big help at this point. But we did see Caleb Tyson, I never know how to pronounce his name, but we did see him briefly. He didn't have a ton of ice time, but he did crack the lineup. So obviously with the defense leaking there a little bit this past weekend, it'd be nice to get one of your ice time leaders back as soon as you can. So what are you looking at? Looking for this weekend?
I actually am really excited for the goaltending matchup. Because it's like, for as good as Lacozzi's been overall in his career, St. Cloud has kind of had his number, and even chased him the last time they played the 5-2 victory, where I think he let in 4 in the second period in a fairly short amount of time. So it's, that's kind of what is holding out a little bit of hope for me here over the weekend, is if we're able to get some confidence and just get pucks fired to the net, not try anything overly complicated or overly sexy or anything like that. Just try to keep it simple and put pucks on the net. That's kind of the big thing I'm going to be looking out for. Everything else, the stats overall look fairly similar. St. Cloud, is just a little bit taller on average, but power play, we're sitting at about 18. They're only at 15. Penalty kill, we're at 84%. They're at about 83%. So it's, as far as like leading scorers goes, they're, maybe a little bit more deeper when it comes to their top point producers, but Bernovic, Hall, our top producers, they've got Strange there at 9 goals, 7 assists as well. So I think this series is going to tell us a lot about how the rest of the season is going to go, and how they're going to respond to how they played. Like I said, I think they played really well against Arizona State. They just couldn't get it done, and I think Arizona State is a lot better than I assumed that they would be this year. Maybe that's a little bit of a NCHC hubris coming in, thinking that they were going to be towards the bottom of the barrel that time in their first time in a conference. But I'm looking forward to this weekend. I'm not looking forward to benches on the opposite sides of the ice. I think that's really annoying for a newer arena. Having that just kind of irks me. But that's something that the Huskies are just going to have to adjust to. Clearing it around the ends is a little bit more risky when things like that happen. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and I think actually we're going to have I am predicting a split plus weekend for the Huskies. 4 more points.
You go back to Enright for St. Cloud?
Yeah. I don't think, especially on Friday, I don't think you go with Cocaine Bear.
Of course,
I was a little surprised that they didn't go with him on Saturday. But like I said, it's not like any of the goals I thought on Friday were Enright's fault.
And then if you go with him, if you go with Gray, it would be another start against Omaha. He's only played against Omaha so far in his career. So it'd be weird to bring him back. Again, if this is a season where the NCAAs are going to be a long shot at this point, why not give some? This would be a perfect scenario. Get Gray some more starts here down the stretch. Enright's done after this year, and is admirable the job I think he's done. His save is now under 90%, and his goals against is above 3. We can say that it's not all of his fault, and I would agree with that. But if we're looking towards the future, if we're going to play out these last 12 games of the regular season, then however much you have in the postseason, Gray is a guy that would be on roster next year. I wouldn't mind seeing him play some more. At least just give him some more action. See what you got there.
I like that. I don't know if this is the weekend.
North Dakota's a better weekend. Western Michigan, Denver, those are going to be better weekends for him.
Because I think you're still holding out hope that you're going to make a run and get to the top. I think you kind of wait until the season is okay, we should kind of punt on this season and prepare for next.
And see, I brought that up last week, and I don't know when that time is. I would agree. It's that I mentioned this last week. It's a weird spot because it's seemingly too early to punt. And certainly if you're in a coach's position, coaches are never going to punt.
Oh,
there's no benefit for tanking in college hockey.
No.
If anything, it's a penalty for tanking, especially
Miami's
now
been tanking for a decade now.
Right. There's no draft to get a better draft position. And even with transfer portal, having guys hang around for 2 months on a team that's playing out the string, that's not something that you want for guys that are potential flight risks. So there's no real easy way to say punt. So it's a strange position to be in, but I don't know, maybe not punt, but again, I feel like the drop off between Gray and Enright isn't huge. So we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised if Gray appears.
Would you start him on Friday?
Maybe not Friday. I'd give him a start this weekend.
Fine.
Depending, again, this is 3 straight games of 4+ goals allowed by Enright. Maybe because it's a road series, he hasn't played on the road yet. Maybe just go with Enright on Friday, see how he plays. If it's another one of these 4-goal performances, yeah, go with Gray on Saturday. If Enright plays well, then you can roll with him on Saturday. Maybe that's kind of how I would play it the rest of the year. Just have Enright be your Friday guy, and then depending on his play, be willing to go with Gray on Saturday. If Friday performance isn't stellar, but again, I'm not the coach.
If Gabnett really wants to big brain it, he would go with Will Craig in net. The sophomore who only has 1 game played this season. I think him being in net is a sure shutout for Omaha, because Huskies against third string goalies. It's our kryptonite. So that's if Cabinet really wants to roll the dice and do that, I think it would be kind of funny to watch.
They did see this Kevin Radler, who's their backup, who's played 5 games for them this year. Radler and Latkozy both have .934 save percentage. Part of that is a function that the Omaha gives up a lot of shots as a team, but those are really good save percentages for both of those players. Radler came in in relief on that Saturday game at St. Cloud about a month ago. A really tall goalie, 6'6", but drafted prospect by the Senators. So, and as you mentioned, Latkozy, perhaps more than any other team, has struggled against St. Cloud in his career. So I wouldn't be surprised if Radler starts. I would be shocked if Will Craig starts, but I don't know. I don't think you were 100% serious on with your suggestion. But the goaltending matchup will be an interesting one to keep an eye on. And part of that Gross major, another effect of that was him getting the boot for that game, which meant that the team was down to 11 forwards, which, already an injured, we got word that Jack Rogers is out for the season, eligible for a red shirt. So we've got 2 more years to get those 40-point years that Go Huskies Woo was claiming was in his future. But then, and with Rosborough's injury that we mentioned, I was just wondering, well, so with Gross out, another center, what are you going to do with centers if you're down to 3 for the rest of that period? That was early in the third, so you basically had to play the rest of the third with limited.
And Ryman, who has.
I thought Ryman played decent. Decent at center this past weekend. And I did see that Hall was taking some draws. So they did shift Hall to center briefly in some of those sequences in the third period, which is what I had suggested last weekend when I was putting the lines in a blender. Thought that might be a decent idea to get him some action at the center position. But playing with just 12 forwards, you don't have any wiggle room. As far as no extra forward to be cycling through, you're stuck with guys like Ports, and you're going to keep the red shirt on Ocean Wallace. So, but that just means that things like Gross's ejection from the game have effects where you're playing shorthanded now, playing with 11 forwards. So, but again, those kind of things can force you into trying things that you normally wouldn't do, and giving guys like Hall some shifts at center, I don't think is a bad idea. Again, I'm pro experimentation at this point in the season. And I don't think that experimenting necessarily means punting or giving up, but just being willing to try some things. There are, again, this stretch of the season, you do have the ability, I think, to do experiments like that, trying guys at different positions or trying different line mates, trying different power play setups, things like that. We'll see if there's any more experimentation for this coming weekend, but I'd be definitely for it.
That is pretty much it. I realized that I skipped over our whiskey talk segment. As we were talking about Omaha, I realized that I've got my little snifter here, and I was like, I forgot to give my impressions here on this whiskey. So I've had it sitting here, ready to go. So I apologize to everybody who was waiting, bated breath, for this moment. The whiskey review, probably Whiskey Dave, and no one else. But hey, I'm a big fan of this segment, so I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah, same here. Where are we drinking tonight?
We're going to Germany.
Okay.
It's really yellow in color. It's not too much, so I'll go ahead and have the first sip here.
And the verdict.
Whole lot of nothing. Not Germans, they should stick to beer, apparently. If I were to get this, I probably a 5.9. It just
That's the worst on the board.
So far, it is the worst. I got to keep a chart. I don't actually remember what the rankings were. Did Denmark overtake Peru in the rankings?
I believe so.
I don't remember.
I believe so.
So, Yeah, there's just not a lot to it. I feel like, though, if you're not a whiskey fan, like getting into it, I think this would be a good starter pack. But I'm a connoisseur at this point. I'm fancy AF, so I like a little bit more. So that's our whiskey corner. I gotta talk to maybe Jason Bryant if he can give us a sounder for the whiskey segment.
Yeah, I'm wondering. My brain is spinning with some whiskey puns. I mean, whiskey business, but that's kind of old hat at this point. There's something there. We can workshop that.
Is there like a sideways, but instead of wine, it's whiskey? There's got to be some kind of quote from there. I'm not. If anyone orders a rye, I'm leaving. Something along those lines.
No, it would be like it's rye. It's not, don't ever call it Canadian whiskey. I feel like there's the Canadian whiskey versus rye would be a
okay.
That would be that Paul Giamatti would have a problem with that. I think.
Yeah, I got it. It's it's a Scotch from Ireland, and then everything just goes. We did not fight wars over this. I can see that happen.
If I see a bottle of Jameson, I'm gonna lose it. Yeah, maybe we could write that movie.
There we go. We already got like a quarter of the screenplay.
It would just be a blatant ripoff. We'd call it like Upside Down instead of Sideways.
Guess what though? If we just label it as a parody, it's all in fair use, right?
It could be like the was it Loaded Weapon? The movies that were the Lethal Weapon parodies.
You're talking about Naked Gun?
Naked Gun, obviously, but it seemed like
I never heard of Loaded Weapon.
Loaded Weapon was like a National Lampoon's, I think.
Oh,
there was a early '90s. I think there was a cottage industry of movies like that. It was like, Wrongfully Accused with Leslie Nielsen as well. Was a mashup, and then you got like the scary movies where they're taking a whole list of films and incorporating parodies, but
not another teen
movie, which I think is great. I think it's
hilarious, and especially with how many like actual stars are in that too. It's a fun. It's a good one. So, anything around the men's side that you want to talk about? As far as going on in college hockey, it was I know Minnesota and Notre Dame had a pretty big series that I had my eye on. And then obviously Michigan State, where Michigan won in overtime on Friday. But Michigan State kind of came back on Saturday. So Michigan State still up. I think they're still up on 2 on the pairwise. So that's a little bit of the Big Ten roundup. Stonehill with a big overtime win over Lowell, which raised an eyebrow for me.
Yeah, probably their biggest win as a D1 team. I mean, we're coming off 1 year where they only had the 1 win, period. Up to 8 so far this year for the Skyhawks.
Are they leading the independents?
I mean, in pairwise, LIU is still top half of the pairwise. Went into Madison and got a tie out of the Badgers, who Wisconsin up to 17. Wisconsin is at 10, 12, and 2, still under 500. They might be our best shot for the Wisconsin rule update.
All right.
And again, I think the big reason why is the 6 overtime losses.
I'm sorry. What's that called again?
Wisconsin rule update.
All right, here we go.
It's a literal Wisconsin rule update.
That one snuck up on me. I didn't have it on the button bar. I wasn't ready at that one. So
Northeastern too at under 500 and at 18th in pairwise. They're kind of coasting on the Hockey East coattails. But I don't know, Wisconsin. It's possible they could, if there's any team, I think, because they could still go. They would need to move up a couple of spots, and the cut line's still right now at 15 because Quinnipiac and Mankato are the 14th and 15th teams. So they just need to move up like 2 or 3 spots. And they still play the Gophers. They play Michigan State. Or are they done with Michigan State?
They're done with Michigan State. So they got Michigan next week. They're at the Gophers, Penn State, at Ohio State, and then home against Notre Dame to finish it off.
So and we want them to go one, no more than, but they do need to move up. So like if they go one game over 500, and if they can lose a couple of those losses be in overtime,
that's the key right there.
That's why they're at 17 and under 500, because in regulation they're 8, 6, and 2 in regulation, and so or 8 and 6, I guess, in regulation. They played 10 games that made it to overtime, and 2, 6, and 2 in those. So if they can pick up some more, and which is impressive in retrospect about how they were able to get in 15 years ago when the Wisconsin rule, because that was in an era where overtime rules, it was 5-on-5 overtime, and it was a all or nothing. So there was no benefit of overtime losses back then. You'd feel like now that we have the overtime, the loser RPI points, you feel like it's more in play to get a team that's under 500 to make the field. They might be our best hope at this point. But yeah, I mean, in conference, Arizona State's now number 1 in the NCHC. Western Michigan went out to Grand Forks, took 5 out of 6 against North Dakota. I mean, at this point,
the Fireberry birds are out to roost, and I'm absolutely loving it.
At this point, too, from my perspective,
birds don't roost, do they? That's wrong. Chickens roost, right?
Chickens are birds.
Chickens are birds. Good point.
That's the title.
Didn't think about that.
There's some birds that roost, but with my postseason hopes at this point, can St. Cloud match up with Arizona State? Meaning I can go to those games. That's kind of my what I'm hoping for, I suppose. And if you stop the season now, that's what would happen. Be the 1-8 matchup as everyone had at the beginning of the season. St. Cloud at Arizona State. But let's hope that St. Cloud can move up. And I think Arizona State is a very good team. I think I did pick them 2 weeks ago to make the show, or to make the show. And that seems to be looking like a pretty good pick at this point. Deep, quick team. I think that Homer is pretty good as a goalie. He made some good saves, and so they'll be a tough team for them to win the Penrose. I still feel would be shocked for that, but
yeah,
it's out there. I mean, I really think it's between them and Western and Denver, and we'll
Western does still have 2 games in hand.
That's right. And Western plays Arizona State. That game's at Arizona. That series is at Arizona State. So that's the only. Yep. So Arizona State has both Denver and Western at home. Part of their remaining dozen games here. So, those are tough opponents, obviously. But, I mean, they've got a trip to Miami. They've got a trip to Duluth, and they've got a trip to Omaha, and then home games against Western, Denver, and CC. That's a pretty favorable schedule for them, I think. Especially with the road and home assignments. So I certainly think they'll be a top 3 team. I don't know about number 1, but just looking at that schedule, that's favorable to them. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed. Let's switch over to the women. Let's hit the recap.
Bemidji State comes to the Herb, and the Huskies look to sweep the Beavers in the season series. Friday's opener, and the Huskies strike first when Alice Sorial picks the pocket of the Beaver defender and sets up Emma Gentry, who rifles it past Caitlin Gross at 16:22 of the first period for Gentry's 6th goal of the season. The Huskies would make it 2-0 midway through the second period. as Soriel again shows her playmaking prowess, this time setting up Sofiana Sunderland. As the Huskies break an 0-for-23 dry spell on the power play dating back to November. The power play would stay hot as less than 2 minutes later, Siri Urela would score her first collegiate goal, with Soriel again notching an assist, and the Huskies take a 3-0 lead into the third period. Amelia Carrico ends up stopping all 17 Bemidji shots, and the Huskies shut out the Beavers for the third time in 3 games this season, 3-0. Bemidji comes out strong in the Saturday tilt as Izzy Fairchild gets one past Sani Ahola at the 8:09 mark of the first period to give the Beavers the 1-0 lead at the first intermission. Issa Gettle would extend the lead for the Beavers at 2-0 early in the second period, and Huskies are stymied for the first half of the game by Beavers goaltender Ava Filipova, but the power play breaks through again at 14:28 of the second, and it's sudden PP sniper Siri Urela netting her second goal on the weekend to give the Huskies life at 2-1. Just 4 minutes later, Laura Zimmerman collects her third goal of the season, tipping in a nice Grace Wolf pass, and it's all knotted at 2 going into the third period. The game seems destined for overtime when Sofiana Sunderland takes a long Alisorial stretch pass and beats Filipova on the breakaway with just over a minute to go in regulation, and Huskies close out the 3-2 win and sweep the season series from the Beavers.
All right. Women end up sweeping. Bemidji got some goals in the process, so I was happy to see that. I went to the game, I wasn't able to go to the women's game on the weekend as I normally do, but I went to the men's game for Saturday, and I saw Dale Ross and Sofiana Sunderland walking in the concourse, and I was standing in the concourse, and they were just I saw them as they were walking by, and I was debating, do I say something? Do I not say something? So I decided to kind of say something, and it was just kind of funny because they were in stride, walking, and I just say, "Hey, great weekend," as they were walking by me, and they both looked like still in stride, still in sync with each other. They both looked over at me, nodded once, said thank you, and just kept walking in stride. And like those two were so in sync, and it was like mirror image robots of each other that I was like, that those two are locked in. And I thought that was pretty funny to see how everything was just so in sync with them. Looked like I was seeing double from them. And that was off the heels of Sofiana Sunderland's great move there at the end of that Friday game to not have that forced into overtime, and to complete that comeback there on Friday or on Saturday. Sorry. But I was really happy with the series. Obviously, 3-rip, and then able to on Friday, and then able to come back on Saturday. But more importantly, especially on Friday, I'm just happy that they got shot. Like they started trying to just get mucky goals, I felt, just trying to hammer it in and get and pop the puck in from that aspect of it. Happy to see Emma Gentry, get on the board and her first goal since November. So it was overall, I thought it was a pretty good series, and I enjoyed both games. How they really took it over there on Friday, and how they were able to come back on Saturday after digging themselves a hole.
Yeah, obviously with Bemidji, it's a team that you feel you should beat, and having it be as dicey as it was looking there on Saturday wasn't. I didn't expect that, even with St. Cloud's struggles here. I felt like they're going to take care of Bemidji, even though their series up in Bemidji, we mentioned this last week, was a defensive struggle. But yeah, the wonders that offense can do, especially this team. They have scored 3 or more goals in 8 games this year, undefeated in those 8 games, 7-0-1. That's the recipe for this team. 3 goals is not like, if you average 3 goals a game on the women's side, that's not like an elite offense. Looking at teams like Wisconsin and Ohio State, the usual suspects. 3 goals a game is that might be good for a period for Wisconsin against a team like Bemidji. But with St. Cloud, it's the difference between our really with their NCAA aspirations. I think if this was a team that was able to consistently put in 3 goals plus in a game, we'd be in a much different situation, and it's frustrating. But as you said, it's good to see it, and good to see players like Sorial have such an impressive weekend from a playmaking standpoint. 5 assists on the weekend. Gentry, we've talked about her putting up all these kinds of shots, leading the team in shots most games. I mean, she's top 15 in the country. But with only 5 goals coming into the weekend, she gets her 6th. Again, just a great setup by Sorial, creating a turnover, nice spinorama pass. It was a 95% Sorial play, but you need a finisher there too, and that's a perfect opportunity for a player like Gentry. Great to see that. And again, if we're talking about, building on future pieces on the men's side, you can say the same with this women's team as well. Like a player like Siri Urela, which is, it took me some practice, trust me. Hey Siri.
Hey,
how do you pronounce?
Don't. See,
my iPad just tripped it. Yep,
it just tripped my phone now. Jeez.
But hey, can you play power play?
Yeah,
she's talking to me right now.
Did she answer if she could play power play? We have a Siri that can
Siri,
play.
Can you play? How do you play power play for St. Cloud State?
I found this on this.
She found it. She found something. She's smart as a whistle.
It's probably us two complaining about the power play. I don't know what Nadolski thought of to put her on the power play, but it resulted in 2 goals, one each game for Siri. So it was.
I would assume she'll be quarterbacking the unit for the rest of the year. Yeah. And I'm only half joking.
So,
but yeah, you can use this portion of the season, players like that who, she's a young player, her first year, and if we can get her some action on special teams like we've seen, even the better going forward for this program. Sunderland too is a player that towards the beginning of the season we were really impressed, and playing with Zimmerman, Henderson to start the season. There's been some shuffling with Hadalski with these lines as well, so they haven't been necessarily together for a while. But Sunderland, I thought, was the most impressive of those players. Being the center, you've got to have so many more responsibilities, skating-wise, defensively, passing, breakouts, that kind of thing. I think Sunderland's a player who performs better than her output is, but she still has that ability to have, to make the kinds of plays that we saw this weekend, and how, a goal with a minute left in regulation to take a game from an overtime result, but you're only getting a partial benefit even if you're winning that game. That was a big goal, a very timely goal. And again, you got to give Sorial some credit on that breakout, that long stretch pass to feed her there. But she's got to finish that too. We've seen so many breakaway opportunities, not only for the women's side, but men's side as well, where it just seems like goaltenders are stepping up and saving those plays. But this one was a well-timed goal from Sunderland. It almost makes me, Sorial is my pal, but the Sunderland goal was such a timely one, where again, that one takes a overtime result into a regulation win. If this was at a point in the season where we're not as resigned as we are for the women's chances to make the tournament, that would have been one of the bigger plays of the year. It still was a very big goal from her. And a team too, we're talking about the women's side here, we haven't seen a ton of come from behind victories. Yeah. So having a 2-0 deficit there, no matter who you're playing, with this offense that we're talking about for St. Cloud, that's a tough task. And I'm sure I haven't checked this, but I'm sure that's the first time they come back from a 2-goal deficit. I can't even remember a 1-goal deficit. Yeah, that come from behind tie against Ohio State, but I don't believe they were down by 2 in that game. So coming back from a multi-goal deficit against anybody, I think is a good sign moving forward. And so, this is a series, especially at home. You don't have too many home games in the second half of the season. This is your only true weekend at home. Just kind of one in the home and homes coming up with St. Thomas and the Gophers. So, as your last true series at home this year against a team that's in last place, you want to make sure to take care of business. And it took a little bit more effort than I thought on Saturday that would be required, but they were able to get it done.
Yeah, they were down 2-0 to Ohio State.
That game that they ended up tying.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I was wrong, and that's even more impressive. Come back 2-0.
Well, and it's Jordan Baxter in the second period, a minute 33 in, made it 2-0, and then Bria Parent scored on the power play at 3:18. So it wasn't 2-0 for long.
Right.
So, but yeah,
it was October 19th. That seems like a lifetime ago.
Right.
I would have been in Ann Arbor then. I remember watching the end of that game at the bar that we were pre-gaming at. So, that's so the only other time that they've had to come back, or that you've been able to come from a multi-goal deficit to get some points out of, and even the better to get a full regulation win out of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm in agreement that Sorial is my player. I mean, we scored 6 goals on the weekend, and she assisted on 5 of them. So, like, to me, it was kind of an easy choice. Sunderland, yes, it was timely, but it's Sorial's pass, like you said, makes that happen. And again, this kind of goes into, how I think that she's just such a dynamic playmaker, where anytime that she touches the puck, you never know where she's going to pass it, who she's going to pass it to, and what kind of scoring chance it's going to create, because it could create one from anyone at any time. And, sometimes it's up to the shooters on the Huskies team to catch and fire and get it on net. So, and sometimes that can be a little bit tricky, but, happy that we were able to get it done, get it taken care of. And again, just kept it simple, able to crash the net, create those second, third opportunities and hammer it in, cause a little bit more chaos down low. And I think if we continue that, I think we're going to have a good stretch here coming up. Now, saying that, we got Wisconsin next. And then not only that, but we're definitely on the road heavy the rest of the season. We've only got 2 games left at home. The end of January on the 31st at St. Thomas, and then in February on the 15th, the Gophers come in. So it's road heavy second half, and you got Wisconsin, which obviously Wisconsin being Wisconsin, they've just been absolutely cruising lately. Outscored St. Thomas 17-2 on the weekend. So it's going to be a tall task coming up, to say the least. So, hopefully they're able to kind of create some chances. I'll be interested to see. I'll probably be the same tandem Adulski is going to go with. But Ahola, I don't think has played as well as she played last year. I think there's been a couple of instances there where it's a little bit tricky for her, and she hasn't fielded the puck 100% clean. Maybe that some of that was injury related as well, but it's it'll be obviously a huge test coming up here for the women against Wisconsin.
kind of a schedule quirk, a Saturday-Sunday series. Wisconsin seems to do that a lot at their home series. They had to shuffle it around with that Frozen Confines game with Ohio State, but they played a Thursday game. To start that series, they also played a Thursday-Friday series against Bemidji early in the season. During football season, sometimes they'll avoid Saturday matchups. A Saturday-Sunday series against Duluth early in the season as well. So, was last year also Saturday Sunday? I feel like St. Cloud has played one of these Saturday Sunday series there in recent years. Also playing Saturday Sunday against the Gophers coming up. So their last two home series are both going to be Saturday Sundays, which I'm not really sure why. It's not like they share Laban with anybody else like the men's team, but whatever. You get a little bit of a schedule change up. I'm all for it because Friday afternoons are a little trickier for me to watch games live. So I'll take it where I can watch both these games live.
Especially you're an hour earlier, right?
Hour earlier. Able to still see the games on replay, but it's not quite the same. So I'm for it. But yeah, as you mentioned, it's obviously going to be a huge test. We saw the matchup at the Herb earlier this season. Again, you can look at those box scores and look at shots on goal and stats like that. I think that St. Cloud was really competitive in those series. I mean, 10-0 combined score, but those games were over very early in both cases. The Saturday game, that was the one where Adelsky just about halfway through the game ends up saying, "We're just going to pull our goalie whenever we get a power play." I'm for that philosophy at this point. Badgers coming off a sweep at St. Thomas where they outscored the Tommies 17-2. So they're again, this is one of the best teams in college hockey in recent vintage. I think that's an understatement, if anything. And it's the usual suspects. It's Casey O'Brien. It's Layla Edwards. Edwards, in particular, had a hell of a series against the Tommies here with a 4-goal game on Saturday, 5 goals on the weekend, and 9 points.
9 points?
Nine.
Again, you can look at all these. This is stats porn. Like Edwards, she's gone all but 2 games this year. Only 2 games this year without any points in any game. And both of those games against Ohio State. I mean, you could go through the list here with all of these players. O'Brien, I'm looking at the only team to shut out Casey O'Brien in a game this year, St. Cloud State, November 2nd. But you can go down the list here. I mean, you've got 6 players with 30-plus points, then another with 27. St. Cloud would dream to have one of such players with that amount of points. It's a stacked roster here, and that's not even talking about their goaltending, who Evan McNaughton's put up a .951 save this year. You can't do really any better than that. And a lot of that is a function of the offense that is ahead of her and stellar defense. Don't sleep on players like Caroline Harvey as well. And sort of the bolster, the bulwark of that defensive unit for the Badgers. Very good team. Again, one of the at least top 3 teams in women's college hockey history, I would say. And odds on to win the Natty. Give me competitive games. That's all I can ask. I think it's unrealistic to feel like St. Cloud's going to get any sort of points out of them this weekend. But give me a more competitive performance that you did when they came here in November. That would be a start. But I don't know. Maybe because you're at a position in the season where perhaps you're in a position where you're just kind of having fun. Maybe that loosens you up a little bit. And all of the pressure here is on the Badgers. There's no expectation that St. Cloud is going to come and do anything positive this weekend. So maybe use that to your advantage. Play loose. Have fun. And players like Sorial's kind of on a hot streak themselves. Maybe kind of use that as some forward momentum. Give me something that I can come back next week and rave about. I don't think that's like, I'm definitely going to do that. Like, it's not like that's been easy for any Wisconsin opponent this year. But show me something this weekend. I'd love to see it.
For me, the craziest thing, and my love for Layla Edwards has been well documented, I think, on this podcast. But she is leading her team in shots, just above Lacey Eden. Lacey Eden, 97 shots, 101 shots for Layla Edwards in 26 games. So she's averaging about 4 shots per game, a little bit less. And usually when you're averaging more shots, your shooting percentage is a little bit lower. And if you're not averaging a lot of shots and you have a couple of goals, your shooting percentage is a little higher. Even at 101 shots, she still has a shooting percentage of 23.8%, which is insanely high. So not only does she shoot a lot, she scores a lot. And that's just so incredibly impressive. You go down the list, there are 7 players who average over a point per game. And I don't even recall any word about Kelly Gorbatenko. And there she is, sitting with 10 goals, 17 assists, 1.04 goals per game, or points per game. So incredibly deep, incredibly stacked team. And I think just getting out to a hot start, and not even a hot start, maybe a boring start actually would be better. I don't want to go Kevin Gorg and say I'd rather have it be 0-0 than 2-0 Wild. But both games against Wisconsin. What was that?
Hundreds. He's got that. He's got 2 great lines because it's
that hundred.
You want to be 200. You want to be 0-0 as long as possible, and then the hundreds of pounds that the horses lose.
That the horses lose during
hundreds. The race. It's just great. It never gets old.
So, I can't hate him though, because his advice at Canterbury, actually I took it and it led me to win $60 on a bet. So I can't hate him too much. This one horse started off at 4-1 and now it's going off at 10-1. I have no clue why he's sliding. So I put I can't remember. I put like $6 or $7 down on them to win, and he won. And I was like, hey, there we go. Thanks, Kevin.
He knows his ponies.
Yeah. Not how much weight they lose.
Not that. It's just a slight detail.
But I mean, if both games against Wisconsin earlier this year, they came out to early leads and never looked back. It was, I think, one of the games it was 3-0 before it hit
minute
like 4
and a half
minutes,
in, something like that.
Yeah. So just keep it boring and maybe even a little bit choppy, and hopefully get them a little bit out of rhythm. And like you said, get competitive these games. I don't think I can ask for anything more than that. But I'm going to be cheering for more than that. That's for sure.
Yeah. Edwards with this last weekend, now tied for the nationwide lead in goals, scored 24, with Christina Kaltenkova from Colgate, who was my Patty Kaz pick from a couple of weeks ago, banking on the fact that the voters are going to cancel out all these Wisconsin players and pick the Eastern player. We'll see how that shakes out, but yeah, this team is loaded, and they are elite, to put it lightly. let's turn some heads. How about that?
Yep. Sounds good. I love it. Anything else, college hockey around the women's side that you want to go over? We talked a little bit, obviously, about Wisconsin, but if there's anything else, otherwise we can get to questions.
I feel like my Princeton pick isn't aging very well. That offense, that kick-ass offense that I was banking my pick on, has seemingly
Brad
dried
Childress
up.
Offense. Yeah,
it's dried up.
It was looking really good for that first week.
Yeah,
you had to tweet at me about it.
Really, since then it's been all downhill. They haven't won since
you
then.
Jinxed them.
0-3, I think, since then. Yeah, it's my fault.
Yep.
And then, St. Lawrence, who was your pick, that's kind of how we differed. One of the few deviations in our picks for the women's side. Looks like you're winning that at this point. St. Lawrence looking pretty good. Cornell up to 4th in pairwise, breaking the top 4 WCHA streak, which had been pretty much since the pairwise was legit to look at. Had been Wisconsin 1, and then some form of Ohio State, Minnesota, and Duluth 2, 3, and 4. But Cornell's been playing really well of late, and they've snuck into the 4 seed. Minnesota sweeping Mankato, really with no problem. Ohio State going into Duluth and sweeping them, so getting some revenge for that the summer sweep that Duluth put on the Buckeyes to start the season in Columbus. So it all just comes down to, this feels like we're ending at another Badger Buckeye title game. This weekend did nothing except validate that opinion. But it will still be interesting to see how the kind of the bottom part of the pairwise, because that's still up for grabs. BU with another bad loss this past week. Northeastern, I think, lost twice. See these hockey's teams. That's the problem with that league not being as strong as ECAC or certainly the WCHA. Losses against bad teams in that league can just sink you, and that's kind of been the case with Boston University, who's still leading the conference in points, but they're down to 14th pairwise. BC, still the only Hockey East team that's in pairwise position right now, but St. Cloud is there, tied for 12th with one of the other Huskies, Northeastern, that I just mentioned. So, yeah, and if you win one of these games, they don't have a customizer on USCHO. One of the many things they don't have at USCHO, but
a usable website for one.
I just wonder, what a split would do this weekend. Again, I don't think it's likely, but you got to think that you're going to be up to at least a spot or two. So let's force USCHO into doing that. How about that? Yeah. I'd love to see it.
So perfect. Questions. Most likely best case scenario of which players could step up, leading to a run of solid games. I'm thinking Gavin Thorson builds off this weekend. And again, I think keeping him with Werner, or putting him with Gross, putting him with a center, I think would be nice instead of Mason Sahlquist. So that's kind of my key. I know we kind of ragged on the defense quite a bit. I did think Bufflin had a pretty good weekend. I think if he is going to, get some more time, I think him stepping up as well, I think that is going to be a key. I hope for him making a lot of strides here coming if he gets more playing time here down the stretch.
What's your take on Warren Clark? He seems to kind of have fallen out of favor with Larson. He's getting benched more often than not, and I don't feel like he's been all that impressive, but I don't know. What's your take on him? Drafted player that seems humorous almost at this point, or not humorous, but like head scratching. I don't think Tampa Bay is kind of looking at that pick and being like, "Hey, great, we got him in the stable."
Yeah.
2 seconds on Warren Clark.
It's he's been dicey. But I think a lot of that is just growth wise. I think he can be a solid player. I think there are instances where I'm like, hey, that was a good that was a good play. I see more of his breakdowns. And his his awareness, I think, is what needs a little bit more. I don't know, I guess practice. Like just his situational now, I don't think his situational awareness is as bad as Zinger's, for instance. I think some of his plays were definitely head scratchers when it comes to it. There was one instance, I think it was against UMD, where we pulled the goalie, and instead of pinching to try to keep the puck in the zone and make a play as you need a goal, you peel off and you have the defender get the puck against an open net, and it's just like you got to make a play there. I believe that was Zinger. I should actually double check and just be sure of it, but yeah, it's I think Clark, I think he's got just a lot of learning to do, and I don't think you can give up on him. How much he's fallen out of player favor, though, as you said, does kind of surprise me.
Again, these are CHN stats, so take them with a grain of salt. But of the defensemen, other than Caleb Thiessen, who's barely, I mean, he gets very much token action. Couple of shifts this past week. I barely recognized him on the ice when he was out there. Just very, very little ice time. But Clark is averaging 7 minutes of ice time in the games that he's played. He's played 11 of the games, which is half of the game so far. And so he doesn't stand out, which is not a great thing. But at the same time, he's a defenseman. Sometimes you don't want your defenseman to stand out. I don't know. I guess I haven't seen like him getting burnt like Zinger, the Friday game against Arizona State. The first period, there was 3 plays. The one Arizona State goal was blown coverage, and then there was 2 other plays, just horrendous defensive plays. I've been saying that he should be moved up to the forward position. I've realized this last weekend, he is a forward that's playing defense. That's how like functionally it is. He looks like a player who gets caught, a forward who gets caught playing defense, because like a defenseman is pinching deep in the zone, and then you've got a forward playing defense sort of in his stead just for the time being. Well, that's like Zinger 100% of the time that he plays defense. He just plays it like he would if he's playing forward. And I'd be okay with it if he had more than 5 points this year, but the defensive game is like non-existently bad. It's like terrible. And he's not produced like the goal that Arizona State scored when he was caught deep. That was like a 3-on-2 opportunity where he tried to pinch up and play. He tried to get a pass, but the pass was too far for him to catch. And then Arizona State picks it off, and they're on a rush, and they end up scoring. It's like, if you're going to make those kind of risky plays, at least be in a position where you're going to get the puck and make a shot. In that situation, it was an odd man break that ended up being a non-shot opportunity, and then an easy transition and a goal for Arizona State. And it's like those kind of plays where it's like Clark, yeah, he's not been wowing me, but it feels like he wouldn't do that at least.
Sure.
And so that's, again, if we're going at this point in the regular season from here until whenever the season ends, to give me some more Clark, at least to see what you got. Like, and again, I've seen enough of Zinger at the point position to have me believe that he is just not a capable option defensively. But I realize you're trying to get some offense out of that position. I can see the reason for doing it, but it just I haven't been. I feel like the results just have not been there to justify continuing Zinger at that position. But we'll see.
Sure.
I just wanted your take on Clark, because I don't know if I'm missing something. So again, he's not like someone I've been thrilled with, but I don't feel like there might be something else going on there, injury or something else. But a guy too that you brought in last year, seemingly a year early. You really hope that you didn't stunt his growth there by this could have all worked out better if he was just in juniors last year, and then this year he comes a little bit more seasoned, a little bit more prepared. It feels like his growth has been stunted somewhere along the line here as well, which is frustrating.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I was actually okay with the Zinger pinch. I'm always a fan of getting the defense engaged in the play. I think maybe the awareness of having a forward kind of drop back when that does happen, I think that's what I think was a little bit lost. But because if that pass connects, then it's a completely different story, right? And then I'm complaining about Zinger missing the shot high and wide and it ringing around the outside, because that's probably what would have happened. But I liked that play and I liked that chance. But yeah, it was one of those things where it goes the other way and you're kind of like, oh, well, this is going to end up in the back of the net. And sure enough, it does. So. Next question. Did you watch Larson's Saturday presser? Is he being delusional or just trying to send a message to the team that the sky isn't falling? Yeah, I definitely did watch the presser, and he actually echoed a lot of the statements I thought about how I think the team played better than obviously getting swept and everything along those lines indicates. Now, he is in general going to be a little bit more sunshine and rainbows. I don't think he's the type of coach that'll really rip into his team or send a message in that way, especially in a public forum like that. So I don't know if delusional is the right word. Maybe just hopelessly optimistic, I think is a good term for that. But, he was really stressing that he was going to go to bat for his team, and he was happy with how they battled back on Saturday and everything along those lines. So, yeah, if you got a chance sometime to watch that presser, I can see where it comes off as kind of delusional and like, what are you thinking? But it kind of makes sense that he would feel that way. So I guess it didn't come to me as a surprise.
Yeah, it's I did listen to it. I normally don't listen to the post-game press conferences. I don't really agree with his output or with his statements, but I'm not really expecting him to throw the team under the bus. I've made my thoughts clear about his media interactions. I feel like it's a lot of hot air, and there's only so much value I put into it. Like he said, like he really liked the offensive punch for this game. It's like, yeah, maybe you could have done that a little bit earlier, but so there's certain things. It's just a lot of it's mostly sentence. Like back to back sentences, just cliche. And so, but I don't expect him to go, Sparky Anderson on the bit, and rip into his team. But,
after a win.
Sports is weird. You've got to produce the results at some point. You can't just convince people by a solid argument. That's not how you win games.
Mm-hmm.
And you just didn't produce this weekend, and you haven't produced for a while. Winless on the calendar year. So I don't really care how well he does in his post-game press conferences. Show me something on the ice, and then I can be in a better mood, I suppose.
That's that's again kind of one of the things that I find so interesting about Adolski, and really just the differences in the press conferences between the two. Because I don't think Adolski really minces words, and what he says to the press is the same thing that he says in the locker room. So it's just different strokes. It's just kind of interesting to see. Then Eric, last one, went to Friday game. Attendance was bad, but would rather have it half full with diehards rather than 80 to 90% full with people not really into it. Do you agree or disagree? I asked the follow up and just saying, did you feel like the crowd was into it on Friday? And he said, yeah. Whenever they were up 2-1, 3-1, they were really loud. So his point was that the crowd really punched above the optics of it. I feel that, if you were the university, you'd rather have it 80 to 90% full and don't care what the atmosphere is. But that is nice to hear. When I went on Saturday's game, it, I could sense that the crowd, was definitely into it. They're definitely knowledgeable about the game. But just kind of looking around, it's just a bummer to see so many empty seats. And, that doesn't, it's not really a surprise, as to why, but then I see like the clips of like Michigan State and kind of their arena and how packed it is for them. It's like, God, I kind of miss that atmosphere in those days. And just kind of wondering what it would take to kind of get that back.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the attendance figures. 32 and change on Friday and 36 and change, basically 37 on Saturday. Their season attendance, the average attendance is 3413, which is based on their official capacity is 2/3 full for their average. So 3,200 was under that on Friday. The one home game that I went to, I don't know if we talked about this with the St. Thomas game that I went to a couple of weeks ago. And again, that was during a winter break. But from what I remember, and again, my season tickets were from 07, 08. I mean, I went to every game from 07 through the 16-17 season. It's like 2 exceptions. And then when I was a student before that, I wasn't going to every game, but I was going to, say, 75% of those. 07 to 17 was all in the same 203 section. And I remember from those days, I don't remember, even in the winter breaks, there was always, so when I first started going, I'm sure you can, because you were in the dog pound. From when I was in college, the dog pound would have the 2 lower sections, each side of the rink. We have the lower sections and then the bench seats on top.
Yeah.
When I was there, it was always the first 2 were full. Then it was like Gophers in North Dakota. You'd get most of the upper levels full as well. Well, then that started to dwindle to the point where it was basically just the 2 lower levels. And then towards the end, it was mostly just the 1 lower level that would have been on the side of, would have been the south side of the building, which is, I think, where that was like the main dog pound. That lower section on the south side of the dog pound. When I went to that St. Thomas game, I didn't see any.
The dog pound was on the north side, right?
Again, my directions. You're right. The north side is I'm getting my directions screwed up. The side that I stayed on, whatever the side 203 is on, which is yes, you're right, the north side. But when I went to the St. Thomas game, neither of those lower sections, I didn't see any discernible dog pound, and that was the first time I've seen that ever. Again, it's been 6+7 years let's say, since I've been in the building on a regular basis. So I don't know if you can speak to that. And again, this was during the winter break, but I remember even in winter breaks, you would have at least one dog pound section filled. And this was the first time that I've seen it where there was no dog pound section filled at all, which was troubling. And that paid attendance figure was right around what we're mentioning here, that average. It seemed much deader in there than what the number was. And just the student interaction or the student participation was like there wasn't one, and that was troubling. So I don't know if you can speak to that as far as going to games that are during school session. And I am taking an outlier game. I know I'm not being the most fair as far as making any sort of extrapolations based on one inter-session game that I attended. But do you have any thoughts on that? Just more like the student, the dog pound in particular.
Yeah, I felt like the dog pound, like the puppy pound on the south sides. I think that's a lot less attended. Obviously the lack of the puppy pound prancer, I think, has a lot to do with that. But in all seriousness, I think the student section of the dog pound, I think is pretty well. It's a little bit less, but I think a lot of that, if we go back to the university itself, enrollment, and with that being down so far as well. And I remember there were times as well during the winter breaks that it did really, it was really sparse there. Cause I remember also during winter break, it was, it was always a pain. It's like St. Cloud always made it maybe a little bit more of a hassle. Like you had to fill out a waiver that you were going to be in the dorms through specific days of the winter breaks. And then now, where you used to be able to just scan an ID, you have to go through a couple extra hoops to go to a hockey game. So it's never an instance of, hey, we're going to the hockey game, let's go. Grab a bottle, put it in the Pepsi bottle, and then, mix it on the walk over there. I don't know if that happens anymore. So it's, I think a lot of those factors kind of go into it. I think the big one, though, I think is just enrollment. And I think that has really hit the dog pound more than anything else.
Yes. Yeah. It's those existential questions are, they're big, they're important. Probably better to touch on those maybe in an off-season show. It's so big of a topic, but the future of the program in general is it's not one that I feel warm and cuddly about. And the factors that we're talking about now, with just the enrollment is down, and it can be depressing. And so it's good that at least one of our listeners can report that he feels like the atmosphere is still there at some degree. That's important. And seeing too, that it seems like these kind of flash deals and $10 tickets, that seems to be more and more common. So even like bumps in attendance, if you factor that in, are you making revenue to the extent that is going to make you a consistent, just a school that's going to keep up resource wise with just the schools in your conference? It's long term. If you do just back the napkin economic scribbling, it's I think there's some serious decisions are going to have to be made here in years to come. I don't know how to address those, and I'm certainly not doing my part. I moved away, and I'm not a season ticket holder anymore, and so
I think we can all boils down to it's your fault.
It is.
I think that's what.
I think that's correct. Yes.
But with that, I was able to take advantage of the Flash deal for the family 4-pack that they brought ahead of the game. With, again, anti-family of 5 bias that goes on in the United States is a soapbox for another day. But I was still able to get 4 tickets, 4 hot dogs, 4 chips, and 4 drinks for $80, $20 each. Definitely not a bad deal. And not only that, but like the bags of chips too. They're pretty good size of bags. They're not the little rinky dink ones. They're pretty big. The annoying part though is that they didn't explain how to get the coupons to get your food, because obviously you go online, you put your promo code in, you get your tickets emailed, but it doesn't say anything. So I had to go to the concession stand and ask about it, and they didn't know. So they had to call someone who didn't know, who had to get in hold of somebody else who said, oh, you had to go to will call to get it. So then I had to go explain to the ticket taker, even though it says no entry. And I was like, hey, I didn't know that's where I was supposed to pick it up, because, the tickets are emailed to me. So it was kind of a whole ordeal that wasn't explained very well. So I think some of that communication in future would be a little bit better. Oh, and then I got to the tickets office at will call, and they weren't 100% sure. And they were like, yeah, they're around here somewhere. Hold on. And I'm like, okay. So it was like a lot of communication didn't happen throughout the whole thing. So that's something that can be worked on. But also with that, that kind of tells you that these deals are just kind of fly by night, or just like spur of the moment. Hey, let's put this into effect for this weekend. And maybe, have that as being more of a standing thing throughout the season to get people to go. That and make it easier, because I think those are kind of key things. So yeah, that was just my experience. Maybe I missed it, but anywhere that I looked, I couldn't find where to get the tickets to get my food. And guess what? When you have to feed 3 kids, that's a big draw to also get concession stands built into the price. So,
well, I mean, it's they're making it efforts to try to get fans in, and got to do something in terms of trying to produce revenue. Just with all the changing dynamics, it's important. But yeah, maybe we can table this to an off-season show to explore it deeper, because it obviously is a very, very important question. If we're talking about just the university in general, but that the hockey program in particular, money is a big deal. It maybe has never been a bigger deal in college sports. So.
That's very
true.
Well,
hopefully they'll be able to stay afloat.
Exactly. I'm sure they will. So that about does her on this episode of the Huskies Hockey Podcast. Weldie at More Clappers, MOAR, More Clappers, and Andrew, you can reach him at.
I am on Twitter with Andrew SSUHHP. I did want, before we leave, to throw our friends at KVSC a bone. Alex Fern tells me that they're doing a special Hockey Day KVSC block of programming to coincide with Hockey Day Minnesota this Saturday. Kind of a bummer that St. Cloud doesn't have any home games during this weekend. The Hockey Day Minnesota at Wisconsin for the women, at Omaha for the men, but that doesn't mean that KVSC is not participating in the Hockey Day action. They'll be broadcasting both of those games. Women's game will be Carl Gunner and Sam Raring. They'll be on the call for Madison. That starts at 2 p.m. St. Cloud time. And then we've got Alex and Brian Mose, both former guests of this show. They'll be on the call in Omaha. So it starts at noon. There's going to be interviews with athletes, coaches, team personnel, alumni, all starting at noon Central Time on this Saturday, the 25th. and then you'll stay tuned. You get to listen to the Husky women's game, then the Huskies men's game. And so lots of interesting programming this weekend. And I did want to give them a plug.
Nice.
Tune in to KVSC if you can. This weekend, it's they always put forth a good production, and looking forward to tuning in this weekend.
Quick recommendations. Obviously, the Old Fashioned in Wisconsin, in Madison. Granted, I don't know your ages, but I think a drink of an Old Fashioned from there is a good choice. State Street brats as well. I think anytime you go to Madison, you have to go to State Street. And apparently Omaha has a zoo, so go to a zoo.
They do.
All right, and thank you everybody for listening. We'll be back next week. Until next time, go Huskies. Woo.